for our City Council at-large candidates. And with us tonight, we are joined by Dan Reifschneider, Merv Bennett, Jan Martin, and Helen Collins. And we'll continue with the same format that we started previously. There will be 3 questions posed to the candidates, which require a 50-second or less response. There'll be 2 yes or no questions, and then a final 60-second closing comment period for each of the candidates. We'll begin with Mr. Reifschneider. And the first question is, do you believe that infill development and greenfield development require 2 separate land use review processes?
First of all, I'd like to, everybody hear me? Is this good? Since it has been recognized yet, I'd like to thank our moderator for his great support. I'll be quick and fast. As part of my campaign is to be an efficient form of government. It should be the same processes if it saves time and money for the government and reduces our overhead. I think that's very important as we're trying to save money, taxpayers' money. So the answer quickly is yes, and we need to be efficient when we do our government. Thanks.
All right. Merv Bennett.
Yes, I'm Merv Bennett. For the last 38.5 years, I've worked for the YMCA here in Colorado Springs. The last 19, I've been the CEO. I'm thinking that that should be up for consideration as to whether they should be different or not. They're 2 separate issues. And I'm thinking there's communities across our country that have done this better than we probably have, and we ought to be investigating how they've done it, find out what the best practices are. If it does require a single process, I would support that. But I'd also support consideration of having 2 different processes because it isn't raw ground as far as the greenfields consideration.
Jan Martin.
I just have to start by saying how wonderful it is to be here tonight and to see so many of you here. Do you know tonight is really the first time all of the council candidates have been together for a forum? First time we've met with only 3 weeks left for the election. So it's important for us to be here, but it's even more important for you to be here. As far as the infill versus greenfield, you know, sitting on city council, I can say that the majority of land use issues that come to us are related to infill projects. There is a difference between trying to put a new project inside an existing city system versus building it outside on the outskirts. So I do see that there's a reason and a need for having the 2 separate processes. But I also am a big proponent of streamlining our processes absolutely as much as we possibly can. Thanks.
Helen Collins.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Helen Collins, and I'd like to thank Mr. Welling Clark and the OWN folks for having us here tonight. There's 3 members of the reform team that are on their way here, but it doesn't look like they're going to make it unless they're flying an F-18. I'm a retired Navy. I'm a big believer in infield. I live in Southeast. Our reform members live all over town. They represent the whole city. I'm definitely an infield believer. Thank you.
Okay, we'll begin the next question with Merv Bennett. And the question is, should vacation home rental properties use the same process that is required for bed and breakfast to become established?
Thank you. I didn't even know that that was a question until I saw that it was an issue that came up here. I'll make mine real quick. I feel it needs to be and it must be a level playing field.
Jan Martin.
I actually happen to agree with Merv. I think that we do need to keep it a level playing field. This has been an issue that has come up before. It hasn't reached City Council, but it has been discussed. And I think we need to continue to take a look at it. The idea is to make it fair and equitable. And if one has advantages that another type of business doesn't, that are competing with each other, then we need to really consider the options there.
Helen Collins.
I believe the reform team would take a different approach on that. I understand Sally has a great bed and breakfast, but we're against these business taxes that keep coming up. So I would say I would not be for it. Thank you.
Okay, we'll begin the next question with Jan Martin. Oh, I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself again. Never mind.
And I congratulated the last
Dan Reifschneider.
Work with us, Jim.
I'm sorry.
Help me out a little bit. I did a positive last time.
There you go.
I actually have a question. I'm going to ask the citizens. I mean, who owns a bed and breakfast? Raise your hand. And how many own the other type of industry? Raise your hand. So I'd have to ask, is there a problem? And second, I kind of agree with Sean Page. If there's not a problem, why are we making a big issue? So we need to research that and pay attention. So don't make the problem out of nothing. And the last point, if there is an issue, we should streamline it. If it's in the best interest of the city, we need to combine those two so we have less overhead in the government, get the cost down. Once again, so thanks.
Now we'll begin with Jan Martin. Question is, has the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority been successful and should it be extended?
Well, this is my turn to give an emphatic yes. PPRTA has been one of the most successful tax projects our community has ever seen. I'm fortunate to actually sit on the PPRTA board and have watched and seen how diligent that board is, which is represented from elected officials around the region, how hard they work to complete the projects that were first listed on that tax initiative. It's been a wonderful project. It's an example of how tax initiatives can work in our community. A good example that affects the West Side is the Cimarron Bridge. It never would have been completed if it hadn't been for PPRTA. I'm an ardent supporter of of moving that tax forward as it comes up on the ballot, hopefully in the next year or so. As someone mentioned, there's some questions on how we're going to split the projects next time, but that can all be worked out. PPRTA is a winner.
Helen Collins.
I would like to take the opposite view of Jan. We have a lot of voters out here that voted through the PPRTA tax, and I don't think it was managed very well. So I would not approve. Thank you.
Dan Reifschneider.
That's a tax that was approved by the voters, and I would renew that tax as long as it's one that's approved. The only exception I'd make is if the voters tell us that they want to stop that tax, they need to come forth and say so. For right now, we need the roads and the infrastructure to improve economic development of the city to make sure we're economically viable against other cities. And I've talked to a lot of business people. You know, if there's potholes in the roads and bridges don't work well and et cetera, that causes problems for their business to be productive. So I'd support that initiative right now.
Merv Bennett.
I also would support the renewal, the PPRTA. I did not sign the tax pledge, and I used this as a very example for the reason why the people of Colorado Springs are discerning people and they can make those decisions, and I trust them to make those decisions. I think the PPRTA has been a huge success, and I would support its continuation.
We'll begin the next round of questions. These are yes or no questions, and we'll start with Helen Collins. First question. Do you support collective bargaining for city employees?
No, I do not.
Dan Reifschneider.
No, I do not.
Merv Bennett.
No.
Jan Martin.
It just isn't a black and white question.
Second question, and we'll go back to Dan Reifschneider to begin. Would you attempt to repeal or modify the City of Colorado Springs' unique Tabor legislation? Yes or no?
I'd work with the citizens to modify if they want to.
Merv Bennett.
Modify, yes.
Jan Martin.
Modify, yes.
Helen Collins.
I have to be a Tabor supporter.
Okay. We'll begin with Merv Bennett. You have 60 seconds to give your final closing comments.
Thanks, Jim. I've enjoyed serving this community for the last 38 years. I'd like to continue to serve that. I retired February 1st, but I still have a passion for this community. I'm known as a consensus builder, a collaboration builder, and someone who's put together partnerships in this community that are very unique and are serving 120,000 different people a year. I would like to continue to serve. And if you would like to have someone with my skills, which is in good planning and good partnership building, I would be honored to serve as your city council member.
Jan Martin.
Hi, I'm a native of Colorado Springs. My family roots actually grow very deep here. I ran for city council 4 years ago because I care a lot about the city of Colorado Springs. It's been a pleasure to serve you. I worked hard for the community over the last 4 years. I have a couple things that I really will focus on over my next term. And number one is the economy and our jobs. I just can't say enough about the need for us to attract, create, and retain new jobs in our city. If we can do that, the whole economy will become more vibrant. So that will be my primary focus. But I also believe that my experience, my 4 years of experience on council, will help us make a smooth transition through the strong mayor form of government. We have some real opportunities ahead of us to move forward in a very positive direction as a community, and I think my experience will help with that. So I ask for your vote for Jan Martin on April 5th. Thank you all.
Helen Collins.
Well, again, I'm Helen Collins. I'm retired Navy. I put in over 20 years in the Navy. My specialty was budget, personnel, operations, and management. I was sent to different commands to help straighten them out. I've retired here. I believe we can make a lot of fixes. If you will look at reformcityhall.com website, you will get our priorities. One of the priorities you might want to look at is the SDS. 62 miles of pipeline, $10,000 per foot for SDS. The last 2 years, I've also worked with the elderly on weekends when I had additional time. 2/3 of our elderly live on Social Security alone. They need to manage the budget. Also, I'd like to put in another attaboy for our reform team. Mr. Burcham, Mr. Bruce, and Dr. Kasemeyer could not be here. Apparently, they missed the cutoff by about 4 minutes. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Clark, and all the Westside folks. Thank you.
Dan Reifschneider.
I'd just like to make it clear that I'm an Air Force 20-year retired guy. Nothing against the Navy, but I just have to bring that up. A lot of people want to know why I'm called R12. In the Air Force, when you fly, you get call signs, R12, 13 letters in Reifschneider. Generals and admirals don't like to say Dan, it shows familiarity, and they don't like to say Reifschneider, Reifing. I've heard all the names. R12 is easy, so if you want to use that, go ahead. Let's talk qualifications real quick because I'll run out of time. I'm an aerospace engineer from Iowa State University. I have a Master of Business Administration from Oklahoma City University. I'm a certified project management professional that I got my certification in 2007. I believe in a couple simple things: an efficient, fast government. Just to give you an example of my thought process. What do you call a glass of water if you're an optimist if it's half full? What's a pessimist call it? I'm an engineer. Glass is too big. I'll apply that type of thought process if you elect me. Go to danr12.com if you want to elect me as one of your representatives. Thanks.
All right. Merv? We're done. Now then, the question arises, are there 3 other candidates for at-large council that have since arrived before this segment started?
We'll be here at 7:30.
Well, I'm afraid that might be a bit late, but we did our best. So, thank you one and all, and at this time we'd like to invite the candidates for mayor to the stage.